Whether you recognize him as a founding father, as the third president of the United States, as the founder of the University of Virginia, or as the writer of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson has had a continuing and lasting impact on American society. Even with his accomplishments, every single one of them, each one being amazing in themselves, there does exist a level of contrast and controversy in almost every single one, ending in probably one of the biggest controversies, his true beliefs on the concept of freedom. Over the next few minutes, I will be discussing these accomplishments, some of the controversies that exist with them, as well as Jefferson's viewpoint on the concept of men's equality and the concept of man's freedom. This image of Thomas Jefferson is probably the one that has maybe the biggest significant symbolic impact on American history, and that is of him as the writer of the Declaration of Independence. It is historically believed that he wrote the entire Declaration of Independence himself and that he had to go through numerous drafts in order to get the document the way that he wanted it to be. But even with this accomplishment, new research has come out that has actually discounted this idea of it really being a solo action. Jan Lewis and Peter Onuff state that research has shown that Thomas Jefferson may more or less have just been a draftsman or someone who was writing with others, kind of leading him what to write, and that he's likened it to being a member of a chamber music orchestra and that his instrument was one of many others played. Though this was a great accomplishment of Thomas Jefferson's, it too is shrouded in a level of controversy, especially the mythological idea that we have of him being the sole writer of the document. One of the great accomplishments of Thomas Jefferson that we really don't see much controversy for, that we still see the lasting impact with, is the University of Virginia. It has churned out numerous politicians, numerous important figures in American society, and is one of the crowning jewels of his headstone. This, amongst the other two other items that Jefferson has done, which we'll talk about in a second here, is one of the key concepts that Thomas Jefferson views as part of his legacy, and that indeed is true. This university still stands as one of the most prestigious universities in the entire nation and the entire East Coast. Looking here at Jefferson's headstone or tombstone, we see the three things that he holds as the most important accomplishments in his life: that he was the author of the Declaration of Independence, that he was the founder of the University of Virginia, and that he wrote the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom. This statute was a series of bills passed in 1786, which many believe now was pretty much the basis of the separation of church and state, but this is not completely the case. Daniel Dreisbach, in his writing, stated that this was in fact a document meant to make government more accommodating to those of different religions. So it was for the freedom of religion and the fact that your religion could not determine, nor could it deter your position in society, nor could it deter your position in the government. The Anglican Church was pretty much the main church in Virginia at the time, and the passage of these bills pretty much stated that no matter whether you were Methodist, Presbyterian, no matter your belief system, nothing in government, nothing in society could hold you back from being successful. So while many misinterpreted as the beginnings of separation of church and state, this in fact was not the case. It was more or less a bill of accommodation for those of numerous other religions. One of the final things I kind of want to talk about is the whole concept of freedom and Jefferson's stance on it and equality. Jefferson, as we know, wrote the Declaration of Independence. And in the Declaration of Independence, it said that all men were created equal. Well, what we do know from research is that Jefferson at first was really not a supporter of the idea of slavery. But even in his later life, the thing that stood out the most was the fact that he never released any of his slaves. In his lifetime, he would have owned over 600 slaves at Monticello Plantation, you see here in this picture. Henry Weincheck, in The Dark Side of Thomas Jefferson, portrays Jefferson as someone who originally did in fact want all men to be free and equal, and did not support the idea of slavery, and felt that slavery was actually an execrable commerce, an assemblage of horrors, a cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty. Even with that being the case, A man who stood for the idea of freedom for all never truly gave freedom to those groups of people that worked for him. It is through further research of Dryspec that he even mentioned, not Dryspec, the wine check, that he even mentions the fact that in the building of Monticello here, that Jefferson actually used his slaves or used a group of slaves as collateral, kind of monetizing the idea of slaves being used as money and property. Even with that being the blight on his legacy and the fact that he truly didn't seem to stand for freedom like he stated, he was still a great man who had numerous accomplishments. It is important to remember that if any person, they have accomplished a lot and their stature is great, but even with their great stature, they have contrasts, controversies, and pitfalls. And the legacy of Thomas Jefferson is no different. A great man that he was had many issues like great people do today. Thank you for listening. Have a blessed one.